We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vellet. Hey BraveCo man, I want to tell you about a project that we just finished. It's our Foundations of Masculinity 12 video series that will really help you grow stronger, more confident as a man. Whole bunch of guys are wondering, man, how do I deal with my pain? How do I learn healthy boundaries? How do I lead myself, my family well? How do I become a leader? This course is for you. If you're interested in growing, take 12 weeks out of your life, dig in, do it with a friend, and really up your game. Guys, you can purchase this at braveco.org. Now on to this week's episode. Justin, thanks so much for coming on. This week is going to be awesome. Justin is one of my lifelong friends. We've been friends for, gosh, I don't know, 14
years maybe.
Yeah.
13 somewhere
years.
In there. So.
Long time.
Yeah.
And the funnest part is there's friends that you've known for a long time. And then there's friends that you've done a lot of battle with. You've done a lot of life with. And you and I have done a lot of life together, from counseling and coaching people to being in some of the toughest places for one another. You know, when I was going through my nervous breakdown and all that stuff, you were there with me, and you know, I've been there with your wife, helped to train her and teach her and love on her through the school of ministry. She was she worked with me for a long time, and then you and I we've just had so many really, really cool times together. So this to me is like, it's such a treat to be able to bring a man in that I so trust and believe in. And you're such a gift to the world, but specifically to my life. So thank you for that. And I'm excited to do this podcast with you.
Ditto, man. I do want to say something on that note of friendship. One of the things that's a super valuable asset in my opinion, when it comes to masculine relationships, is when you have friends that are kind of like, you know, that they'll show up for you in a really tight spot. Like, you don't even, there's vulnerable exchanges that we've been able to do that have been really beautiful. And we've been able to love each other in those processes in ways that you've been there to like meet me in pain and stuff like that. And then there's just this, like, something that I super value in this is, like, I know that if you and I go an extended amount of time of not talking or connecting, I can always make a phone call and say, Jay, I'm in trouble here with something, or I especially need help in this area. And you're going to be like, what can I do to show up for you right now? And that type of faithfulness inside of masculinity is, it's a game changer to know that there are other men that are living out there around you that will come in those moments and show up. So
yeah, those relationships are a must have. Every man needs someone that can come and lend strength. Justin, you and Abby have championed some incredible businesses. You've got a great coaching business as well. You guys have your Living Fully Alive podcast and some really cool communities that I'll let you talk about a little bit in there. So if people are looking for a place to find some help, man, you guys have some of the best training and teaching on compassion, connecting with yourself, working through old pain and trauma in your life. Have some friends that are going through your guys' courses, and they're just getting so much breakthrough. So yeah, maybe just share for a second about that.
Yeah, Abby and I have been doing for about 10 years, training, equipping, and transformation within the arena of what I call life consulting, which is helping people really connect to their belief systems, process through their pain, and get connected to the world right in front of them. And we have multiple different courses and stuff. Right now we have the Connected Life podcast, which really we try and give really great material so people can get personal heart transformation for free, because we just want to see lives changed. And then
Mhm.
we have multiple different courses running right now. There's something called the Pathway to Freedom that people can find out more about on Justin and Abby. That's abi.com. And the Pathway to Freedom helps people understand what their emotions are actually trying to tell them about themselves. A lot of times there's this buzzword called triggers, right? And a lot of times triggers means you're doing something to offend me. But when the conversation that happens inside of this course is, hey, the big emotions or responses that I'm having to life are really about my emotions trying to have a conversation with me about unresolved pain. And these
Yeah.
emotions are unconsciously driving a lot of my actions and reactions to life around me. And so it's a way of taking back our life by getting very in tune with what's going on inside of us. And we've seen dramatic changes in people's lives who have gone through that. And so that course is going on right now. But we love seeing people get understanding. If we can understand why we're doing what we're doing, then we have hope to actually make change to it. It's not just that life has to continue to happen to us. And I came from an environment, I'll say this, where there was a lot of levels of neglect and abuse inside of the love expression in my home. And I felt very powerless to pain, powerless to external circumstances. And I spent a lot of my adult life trying to figure out, what does it look like to not be powerless to
Mhm.
things happening to us. And that's a lot of what we do, is help people get out of this sense of powerlessness or victimhood or victim mentality. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we can control life. That just means we know how to manage ourselves internally and heal from the bumps and bruises that we gather along the way. So,
Yeah. Well, you and Abby
yeah.
are masters at taking people through that process. And so,
Oh, thank you.
um, yeah, for sure. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the road to fearlessness. And
Yeah.
I, yeah, in kind of prepping for this podcast, we were talking a little bit, and I want you to dive in and share your story with us.
Mm,
Um, how you grew up, a little bit about the trauma in your life, and then we're going to
mm.
talk about how to become fearless through your story. So, would you share that with us?
Yeah, I'd love to get into that. My One of the things that's really cool in my life is that when I currently reflect on my childhood and the experiences that I had with my parents, I can say that there's been an immense amount of redemption, reconciliation, and restoration inside of the relationships. So I preface this because I think it's necessary to understand that every story has hope. An immense
Yeah.
amount of hope is available. It's God's design that He wants to reconcile pain, chaos, and destruction. Not always do we get it the way that we expect. Okay, but there is beautiful possibilities available, and I think that my story is going to highlight that. And the last I'll say about that in my preface is that it's really cool because now my mom and my dad are really good friends of mine, and we feel like we can really exchange honestly um, our emotions, how we affect one another, which wasn't the case in the beginning. And part of me um, on walking out the road to fearlessness um, was part of what repaired our relationship. So, with that said, growing up in my household, it was actually within the last decade where I was sitting across from a therapist and she said, "Justin, I think you have complex PTSD." And I was like, oh, I don't know what that I didn't go to war or whatever, like we think of PTSD as like somebody went to war and they watched somebody shot in the face or something like that.
Yeah.
And she starts reflecting on my life and she said, "Do you realize that your childhood didn't have a mechanism for nurture and care built into it?"
Mm.
And really every story that we dig into, I cannot find within your story a person. We're not just talking about parental experience. We're talking about any external figure that we could find that was there to nurture and be kind and tender and patient with you. It just didn't exist. And that really floored me. Like when I really came to terms with the reality of that, I'm like, wow, yeah, that wasn't part of my story. And I think that there are a lot of people, excuse me, that can identify with the idea of that. It's in some degrees. But when we get into the deeper parts of it, like my mom was very verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive. That looked like emotional outbursts of screaming, yelling at the top of her lungs, raging, cussing in my face, slapping me, pinching me till I bruise, leaving marks on me inside the house, and vacillating from that extreme of emotional outburst to I love you, you're my best friend, I don't know I do these things to you, and that was a very confusing thing, and I got very much put in this role of I am the primary attachment for my mom, where my dad should have been that. There's a book called The Emotional Incest Syndrome, and it sounds like a horrible book, but it actually talks about like when a parent's love rules our life. It's about this idea that all of a sudden we've become their primary when their spouse should be, and they've leaned on us to get a lot of needs met and stuff. And
Yeah.
so what I watched was inside the household, my mom was very explosive and my dad was very passive and disconnected. He was surviving life, and you kind of see that when he got outside the household, like on job sites. His father owned an electrical business, he ran that, and I at 13 started working with him, and in that space he was very intense and aggressive, belittling, demeaning, impatient. And so what you had was this world around me where at any moment dad's going to explode on the job site, mom's going to explode inside of the house. Grandfather's going to be aggressive and demeaning. Grandmother is going to be very dismissive, and they were very close because they worked in the business too. And so the environment that I was in with my primary attachments, there should have been someone that I could go cry to, that I
Yeah.
could go lean on and say, this is painful.
Yeah.
And common themes or phrases was suck it up and get over it. Build me a bridge, cry me a river, get over it. I'll give you something to cry about. Quit your crying. You don't
All
have
those
anything to be
really
scared of.
encouraging, all those really encouraging, helpful statements.
It was really empowering for me, really.
Yeah.
I learned how to die to my humanity. And there was a point, a crossroads. I remember, and again, this stuff is public knowledge. I've had these dialogues, and it's really cool because my parents have faced a lot of shame that they had about the trauma that they were in that evoked a lot of those experiences. I had a brother that had died at 3 years old. It was like my mom's fourth child she had lost. There was my dad started spiraling after that. You like these situations don't just happen. There aren't villains to our stories. Everybody has
Yeah.
perpetual pain points that if they don't have the care, the nurture, the love that's necessary to grieve well, they cope. And as they cope, they begin to break down and act out in destructive manners that it's not their authentic selves. This wasn't authentically who they were designed to be, but they were acting out of unprocessed pain, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there was this moment where my mom was being very violent towards me, and I was crying, and she was like, stop your crying, stop your crying. If you get me in trouble with your dad, you're going to get it worse. And I heard that a lot. And in this one moment, I was like, I will never give you my tears ever again.
Mm.
And I was probably 10 years old. I'd say about 10, somewhere in there, 10, 11. And I just turned it off. And I was like, okay. And I just sat there. She just kept smacking me, just deadpan. And what I didn't do was remove the threat out of my life. I didn't deal with the threat. I compartmentalized. I disconnected from big portions of my soul. It started to unravel a lifestyle of suicidal ideation, right? So it was,
Mm.
I just think about killing myself all the time. And my fantasy was, if I somehow kill myself in a way that's big enough that all these people are going to understand how much pain I'm in. They're going to get the
Yeah.
memo. And it wasn't that I wanted to die. It's that I wanted out of the pain. I wanted people to stop being threatening around me. And so it's like nothing had changed. I just shut off. And that happens for so many people. They just shut off. But what I did was, in shutting off, is I gridlocked myself in a season of life, a season of time. So I was perpetually trapped 20 years later, 10, 15 years later, in childhood trauma, in childhood moments where the threats were very real. It was like in my psyche, in my being, they were ongoing. And it was just, I'm scared. I'm scared. Something's going to hurt me. Something's going to take advantage of me. I'm not going to get taken care of. And that bled into my adult life. And I got the gift of having it all come up on my journey of facing fears, and getting into marriage.
Man, that's wild. Not that there's funny points in your childhood, but there was one. The funniest story in your childhood for me is when your mom used to put you on the couch and vacuum the carpet all around you, right? And then she would go to the store and she would know if you got off the couch because of the footprints,
Uh-huh.
right? But
Yes.
you would go and sneak these cheese, what was it, like the American cheese packets?
The American cheese packets. Uh-huh.
And then
I
you'd
think
come
it's
back
hysterical you still
and
remember this.
yeah, you'd come back and you would wipe the footprints away and you would shove
Uh-huh.
the old cheese packets into the couch.
Oh, no, what's funny is that the reason this is especially funny is how it got found out. My parents one day, so she'd go to the store for like 15, 20 minutes and come back. And, it was in the 80s, and, everyone was like, my kid will survive 20 minutes with me away. So yeah, she created this barrier of like, you're on this couch, you're not going to get away. And I figured out how to get to that cheese. But I didn't want to have to like go back and make more prints. So all of a sudden these wrappers get stuffed in the couch. And one day my dad is like just vacuuming through the couch, and he's like, it just keeps getting clogged, this vacuum handle. He's like, what is going in here? And it's just like dozens and dozens of cheese wrappers are just packed into the couch. And it showed on my waistline too. where's this where's this kid packing all this weight from?
Just see little fat Justin tiptoeing
It's
off
true.
like 007. Oh my God.
trying to get to his cheese.
It
It's funny,
wasn't all bad.
no, it wasn't all bad. But it's interesting because even in that, uh, as a kid, we look for outlets, right? And it's
Yeah.
a funny segue into
Yeah.
how we deal with pain and
Yeah.
stuff like that, because it was like I was medicating on food. And I know
Yeah.
so many kids nowadays, like that is their comfort. That is their control. They are going to go find a way to force feed themselves something, and that is their care. And it's funny because I got healed of binge eating in my later adult years when I dealt with my complex PTSD. Like I wasn't this massive binge eater who was like, I was
Yeah.
taking care of myself, but I would just have these crazy cravings. And as I was working through my complex PTSD, one of the, I would say one of my best friends was a guy named self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency in the midst of pain, him and I sat down and be like, I got this. I'll figure out how to take care of it. Because there wasn't really an alternative, right? As a kid to go like, hey, I'm sad right now. Things are really painful.
Yeah.
I'm just going to learn how to be really powerful all on my own. And in that season, I kind of went through a divorce with self-sufficiency. And I was like, I'm going to really let people take care of me. I'm going to let them really be there for me. And it was wild to watch all of a sudden my a deep hunger pain disappear out of my life. Cause all of a sudden there was this connection to care and nurture. Friends, like guy friends that I'd go and be like, can you hug me for a second? I'm in so much pain. And they would be like, I am so capable of that. And I'd cry in their arms. Healthy masculine exchanges where I could get that masculine nurture and care. And exchanges with my wife where I'd let her in big pain points and let her hold me and be kind and tender with me. It changed the game, man.
Yeah, it's a it's a complete game changer. I mean, I met you, I would say, in the middle of your process.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
would
fair.
would you
It's
say
a fair
that's accurate?
assessment. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
very accurate. Yeah.
and yeah, and so to watch where you where you started to where you're at today is just crazy. I mean, and the thing I love the most, that's why I love you and Abby so much,
Mm,
and believe in you guys so much. For
mm,
years, I have just been such a champion, and I'm not tooting my own
mm-hmm,
horn. I'm saying the reason why I love this, you guys, is because
mm.
you went through a process that was really your own. This is not theory. This is not like, in theory, I learned
Yeah.
this in school and then I'm going to go and try to apply these things. Like, you were in the middle of hell, and
Yeah.
Abby too. I mean, her story is just as gnarly as yours.
Absolutely.
In the middle of hell,
Mm-hmm.
had to really decided to face your trauma, your past, your present, where you're really at, and dive into that, jump into the process. And that, I'll tell you, like, that's so hard, which is why we're talking about, like, walking down the road of fearlessness. I'm in the men's ministry, of course, in the men's world.
Yeah.
And most of the time when men are talking about, you got to be fearless, you got to be fearless, it's it's a bunch of dudes, doing thousands of push-ups and carrying logs and swimming in cold water. And, like, I like that stuff. It's fine. There's a place for that stuff. I'm not saying there's no place for
Yeah.
that. But as you modeled really well, the true fearlessness, which, by the
Mm.
way, there's no such thing as not being afraid.
Yeah.
Uh,
I agree.
but in this context, right? True fearlessness is being able to look at what's really going on inside of you and facing it,
Yeah.
facing the fear. And you did that. You did that. I'd love to have you just walk us through, like, man, what's the first step? There's lots of guys
Yeah.
that are living so afraid of their past, so bound to their past, so bound to, and it's all
Mm.
unconscious, right? That's the tough part, is these chains to our past, these voices that are inside of us. You can't hear them on an audible level, and sometimes you're not even aware that
No.
it's happening even inside of you. And so, you're afraid of their wife, they're afraid of starting a business, they're afraid of being a failure, they're afraid of real friendships, they're afraid of being a leader. And you find out,
Yeah.
you find out one day that you've lived your whole life in reaction to something that's not even still alive, although it's living in
Yep.
you, right? The trauma you're reliving over and over again. So I'm not downplaying
Yeah.
that, but it's not present day.
Yep. Yeah. I'd
How
love
did
to
you
get
start
into that.
tackling that?
Yeah. I'll add this before I get into the tackling it. I have met with some very successful, very wealthy people of notoriety. And I say that because they've hit career pinnacles. And they'll come in and they'll be like, I feel like such a fraud.
Mm,
I mean, we're talking like when stock market was crashing and housing market was crashing and things like that. Guys who were like the go-tos in that stuff in their arenas to help like facilitate saving the markets and stuff and give strategy would dialogue with me and like, I'm just scared that one day everyone's going to see what a fraud I am. Right. And so on that note, it's like there was all the external work that they were doing to be fearless and face all their fears, and it wasn't solving these root issues. And so getting
Yeah.
into the root conversation, because a lot of people be like, I don't have any fears, because you're in denial. You're in
Yeah.
dissociation. You're one of the things, let me add this before I get going as well. I was in a conversation with my therapist today, and we were talking actually about fear, which is funny. And how it wasn't a safe word to share in my childhood. It
Yeah.
wasn't safe to say like, hey, I'm scared of how you're treating me, because it was only going to evoke more. And acknowledging fear is some of the scariest first steps. Like the scariest step is to say fear even exists, because we can be angry, we can be ferocious, we can be frustrated, we can be irritated, acknowledging I'm sad and I'm scared. They are very low on the totem pole as far as options to share. And they signify the lie that's been perpetuated around them is, if I acknowledge them, I am signifying that I'm a weak person. In fact, we're sitting here on BraveCo, right? Podcast.
Yep.
And one of the bravest things we can do is divorce our relationship with denial and begin to deliberately address areas like, I want to look at what fear exists inside of me. I know I've got to have it. I know I'm not actually living out the fullness of my dreams. And so that's what kind of played a role in me beginning my journey of practically facing fear. At 25 years old, I was in a kind of dialogue with God, reviewing my life. And I was thinking about how small I was living. And when I say small, I was thinking like, oh, here's all the dreams and desires, if I'm honest with myself, that I want to do, but I'm not doing them. Why am I not doing them? I am flippin' terrified of what will happen if I face these things, the places that I'll get rejected, the places where I could fail, the places where people could mock me. And I had kind of this epiphany. And the statement was, fear is the gateway between us and the destiny of who we're created to be. It's like this idea that fear stands as like this gateway, this doorway, this locked gate that's saying, hey, you're never going to be what God designed you to be, because I'm going to stand here and keep you from being that. And I realized, like, if I actually want to step into the fullness of my true personality, my true desires, the true design, I'm going to have to pass to that gate. And I was like, God, I am ready to start facing my greatest fears, no matter what it costs me.
Wow.
I was like, I might as well, because I would rather face it and face whatever comes with it than stay here and die live the rest of this life and die knowing that I lived in insignificance. And
Yeah.
like when I say insignificance, like I didn't become who I was designed to be. I don't care if anyone ever knows my name. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm like, this feels like small and insignificant. I felt little. And I'm like, I'm not going to die going, oh, my whole life was spent me being little when I didn't have to be. And that
Yeah.
is the hell that we are living in on this earth. We are in our own jail cell, our prison built out of our finely woven fears that say, we're not going to let you know the fullness of love and express the fullness of yourself through being connected to that love. Because fear doesn't want you to connect to love. And fear is this stopping point for love. It says, nope, love can't get to these areas. And my first point of contact in doing this is, I'm going to get married. That feels terrifying. And I'm going to allow someone to fully see me. I'm going to allow someone to choose to love me. I'm going to allow someone to get inside of my pain process with me. Like, as I said yes to this, I got married. I quit my job. I'd never been without a job. I quit making money, which since I was 13, I'd been making money. I did it in 2008 when everything was falling apart. There was no guarantee of if there was going to be more for me. So I started having to face my own relationship with performance. And it began a snowball of events where I end up living. Okay, this is hysterical. Living as a married man, a year into marriage, in my parents' basement with my wife
Bro, that's a
in
friggin'
Montana.
nightmare.
It's a nightmare on so many levels. It's a nightmare because my relationship with my parents hadn't even been honestly looked at yet. We hadn't had resolve yet. I also had this fear that if I go work for my parents, like my dad worked with his parents, that I would just live the same life that he did, where everything fell apart, the marriage was crappy, that I was bound to their cyclical lifestyles that they were living out of. And I was like, okay, I'm going to defeat the cyclical lifestyles. I'm going to face the places where I feel inadequate as a husband because I'm living with my parents,
Hmm.
because I took a year off of work completely. What started as a 3-month journey was an entire year without working, blowing through all of our savings,
Gosh.
experiencing each other, butting heads, trying to figure out what it meant to be married and what it meant to love another person. It was terrifying. And at every part of these, mm, every moment of running into a wall of fear, my conversations with God kept driving me into a deep, deep place of intimacy, which was, Dad, do you love me? Are you with me? Are you disconnected like my earthly dad? Are you angry and punishing like my earthly mom? Who are you truly? Like, God, the reason that we live bound inside fear is because we don't have a revelation of the unrelenting love nature of our creator. And I was getting perpetually liberated by my fear by saying yes to an invitation to face it, and by inviting God's feedback into those moments and saying,
Hmm.
like, here's my fear, I'm willing to trust you with this moment. I feel too broken to figure out how to save my marriage. I feel too broken to figure out how to take the next steps with my career. And it wasn't like I'm being a victim to life. It's I'm being honest about where I feel paralyzed, where I feel insecure and small. I got honest with me.
Hmm.
I got honest with God. I didn't try to say like, oh, I got this, God. Oh, I got this, Abby. I'm like, I don't know, Abby. I'm making a mess in the marriage. You're making a mess in the marriage. I don't know what to do. I got humbled. Like, facing fear produces humility. Pride is really, I'm trying to prove that I have this all together. Facing fear rips the pride all out and goes, I don't have answers.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here and I need answers. And that's where humility starts breaking in.
It's such a necessary baseline for everyone to get to, right? Because then you can
Yeah.
get some real work done. You can get some real work done with somebody who says, I don't have the answers. I have a problem.
Yep.
I'm willing to own it, and I need to do something about this. For
Yep.
other people, I think fear also comes along. It looks like a friend, right? So for some of you
Yes.
guys, it will come in and pretend that it's this friend that's helping you navigate life, that's keeping you alive. It's just been working so hard to preserve your life and your name and your
Uh
integrity,
huh.
and sometimes we have to stop and actually make a conscious decision to divorce
Yep.
that thing that we've called friend for a long time. And literally just stopping and saying, Fear, you've been a friend for a long time, and starting to recognize, right? When we do that, we start to recognize the voice and where it's come in, and
Mm-hmm.
tried to be a leader, a helper, a father in a place of a father, now you got fear in a place of friends. You have fear that's trying to give you good guidance, and stopping and really breaking that can be massive.
Well, and I want to
Can be
add,
really
I want
massive.
to, yeah, I want to add to that. Oftentimes people, there's a phrase that's like, oh, don't you, they'll say stuff like, oh, aren't you worried? Don't you care about what's happening right now? Don't you care about what's happening? Aren't you worried about this
Shame on you.
situation? Yeah. So there's this design a cultural design that says, hey, to care is to be in friendship with fear and worry, and to trust it. And the lie that fear sells us, it's basically like, hey, if you are close enough to me, I can prevent these situations from happening in your life. If you're scared enough of being rejected, if you're scared enough of having a divorce, if you're scared enough of failing at this thing, you'll be able to have control, you'll be able to plan for things, and you're going to be okay. But in all actuality, fear comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Really,
Yeah.
it is not the nature of God. It is there to accuse you of who you are, who God is, and what God's plans are for you inside of your life. And really, most of the people that I work with in my office, I'm helping them to understand fear is your God. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
just a friend, it's become your God. It become your safe haven that you settle into, and you go, okay, fear, what should I have anxiety or worry about now to protect me? You're going to protect me. And I stopped letting fear be my God. And I actually was like, when you talk about the divorce process, I had a conversation with fear. I'm like, fear, you're a terrible friend. You're a terrible God. You don't protect me. There's no payoff. I still keep getting rejected. I still keep having problems and failing in these areas. You have never actually accomplished anything you've said that you were setting out to do inside of my life. And I've believed that you're more powerful than the nature of God, the nature
Mm-hmm.
of love, the nature of care, the nature of patience and gentleness and kindness and all, like, and I'm just done with that.
Yeah.
I minimized. Yeah.
No, I think it's great. At some point, the rubber meets the road, right? Where you take those steps, you have this epiphany, you say, you know, I've lived my whole life being bound by fear. I've got this
Yeah.
trauma in my life. But, I broke a partnership with fear, but I still have to face it, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
wake up in the morning and you got to put some boots to the trail and actually take some steps. And
It's
I
real.
think that's where, like, a lot of men want to have confidence in an area. They want to feel
Yeah.
like a confident man. All of us do, but confidence is only built through doing. Like, I can't
Yeah.
give you my confidence. I can give you courage. I could encourage you, but
Yeah.
confidence comes when I do something and I learn from my failure and I try it again. I get a little bit of success, and the more I do that right, the more confident I get. And
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing, like in my mind, whether working through trauma in your life or overcoming these
Mm-hmm.
obstacles of fear. And I'd love for you to take us down just through, like, what were some of those confidence building moments, whether it was a bit with your business, whether it was with your wife. Like, what did the day to day look like when you were having to, you know face that fear in your life that made you want to turn back, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, there was such a mixture of confidence building. Um, like, when you think of something like, let me give you an example, simple thing, my business. When I started my business, I remember, like, I didn't know how to start a business and I didn't know how to get a business license. And my first fear I was facing was a conversation with my buddy Ryan. And I said, Ryan, I got to be honest. So I was like facing this big thing to expose myself to another man. I feel so overwhelmed and I feel so scared and I feel so small at the idea of knowing what to do about getting a business license. And I feel like I'm dumb for not knowing how to do this. And he was so kind with me. And he was like, buddy, I know those things can feel overwhelming, especially when you didn't go to business school and you weren't taught anything and you're not allowed to ask questions. Cause I wasn't allowed to ask questions, really. I got
Yeah.
more frustration when I asked questions as a kid. He was like, could I go with you and take you down to where you can get the business license place? And can we go together and fill out papers? And I just started tearing up right there. And I was like, yeah, I would love that. And I let him father me. I let a fathering moment happen with a peer. And I started leaning into letting people practically love me in moments. I want to circle back to situation with you and I that we had. One of the things that you did, which was very empowering and I feel deeply, deeply loved by, is years ago, you put together a men's conference and was like, Justin, I want to do this together. And you created an invitational space for me to deep dive into expressing something that's designed inside of me. And there was like 500 to 600 guys that were going to be at this engagement, I think. And that felt really daunting. It triggered me into an emotional flashback of my childhood and having heavy expectations to be something or show up. And I was trying to shove all the fear down and just power through, be like, I'm just going to do this. And I think a day or two before the event, I was like, I can't hold this down anymore. And I broke down sob crying. And I decided I was going to let myself feel the depth of the pain and the fear. And Abby thought I was having like a mental breakdown. I am like scream crying on the floor because I'm so connected to this pain in my life that I'd been ignoring for so long. And she was like, I don't know what to do with this. And so she gives you a phone call. And I'm like fetal position on the floor in my living room, scream crying. And all of a sudden, a big spoon wraps itself around me and is on the floor with me, is like, hey, buddy. And you're there and your arm was around me. And it startled the hell out of me, man. I was like, oh my gosh. And for a moment, I froze up because I was like, oh my God, I feel so exposed. Here's another guy who's a friend, but he's also here holding me. And I feel mixed emotions. Like, I haven't had a masculine affection that decides to jump into the space of my pain and comfort and physically care for me. And I had to, in that moment, face the fear of feeling shameful and foolish that I would need this or that I would allow this. And I'm like, okay, I told myself, you're going to let Jason love you. You're going to let him show up for you. Wow, I've just got emotional talking about it. I haven't even thought about this in years, and I just hit tears. This is crazy as I'm reflecting. And I remember just being like, you're going to let him give a fathering love in this moment that you so desperately needed. And I allowed myself to connect to the little boy who felt so overwhelmed by the expectations that he was thrown into by his father. And in this moment, that little boy was getting direct access to a fathering figure that was like, I love you. I'm with you. You're not bad for this. I can be here in this moment. And I just wept, and I was no longer a 20-some-year-old man. I was a 10-year-old boy that was finally getting taken care of. And what I'm saying inside of this is I let the love that was available to me in my environment begin to practically repair the broken places that hadn't been parented. Do you remember? I think you probably remember that pretty well, huh, Jay?
Bro, yeah, 100%. I remember Abby calling me, getting the call and being like, something's wrong with Justin. He's on the floor crying.
He's broken.
I don't know what's wrong. Yeah, he broke himself. Can you come over? And I remember coming over there and being like, oh, shoot. I mean, what do you do besides like just jump into the mix and go, hey, what's going on? Like, how are you okay? What's happening for you? And, I had a dad that modeled what it looked like to be there for me. I had the opposite, of you when I can remember being really young, and I had a lot of anxiety as a kid that I didn't really know that I didn't know what it was. I had a lot of fear and anxiety when I was a kid. And so went through a whole stint of my life where probably 3 nights a week I'd end up, sneaking into my parents' room late in the night and just sleeping on their floor. And sometimes my dad would wake up in the middle of the night. I was probably 12, 13, and he would come over and he would just lay by me. And those were like some of the most important moments in my entire life. Some of the most important moments in my entire life was simply my dad coming over, not shaming me, not going, "Hey, you're 13. You know, what the hell's wrong with you?"
Grow up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing upstairs. There's nothing in your room, nothing in the house. But he just came and he would just lay with me. And sometimes he'd pray over me. Sometimes he would, sometimes he'd just lay there and I'd fall asleep and he'd eventually bring a blanket, cover me up. And, those rare moments that you get to be strength for somebody else. And it looks different. It looks different all the time, but those rare moments that somebody allows you into their pain point and you get to be a listener, and then you get to be a voice of comfort. And Matthew says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And I love that verse because the truth, it's also true that the opposite, like cursed are those who don't mourn because there's no comfort.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the truth is,
That's great.
when men look at care, emotional care, physical care has been so perverted by our culture.
Yeah, it has.
I mean, even guys listening to this would be like, "Oh my gosh, you got down and you gave another guy a hug when he was crying." Like, it's just hard. It's awkward. It's hard. It's hard for men to think through. And then you start to look at like, well, who told you that that's wrong? Who told you that you're not, that that's weak, that there's something wrong with you if you need, an encouraging word or affection or a hug from another guy. And that's part of the trauma that you're facing. That's part of the fear that's been put over our culture, over men. And so, I remember it was awkward for me. I mean, that's the truth, is like, it was I had to push through that awkward thing inside of me. That's like, oh, here's a full grown man in a fetal position crying, and his wife, is standing by being caring. And I'm like, oh, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to jump into his pain and be there for him. And it's a privilege. Those moments are a privilege because I'm not really healing. I'm not a part of the 28-year-old's healing. I'm a part of the 12-year-old's healing. I'm a part of the 13-year-old's healing. And here's the thing about your trauma, men. And we're not saying every man has trauma, but here's the thing about trauma is you are every age you've ever been.
Yes.
You don't grow up and then all of a sudden I'm just 42 years old. That's it. Negative. I'm not afraid of the person that's in front of me today. I'm not afraid of the opportunity that's in front of me today. I'm afraid of the things that hurt me. I'm afraid of the things that broke me, and they're manifesting today in my opportunity, in the person that's in front of me. And we have this beautiful opportunity to actually go back and address that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old boy or girl, for a girl who's listening to this, and actually say, for the first time maybe in his life, I see you, I know you, you're valuable, I love you. I can sit in this moment with you for a little bit and walk you through this time, right? Like, that's how we begin to heal the traumas. Even God, like, right? Like, invite God into the moment where you were overwhelmed with fear. Invite God into the moment, because listen, even though those moments are over in your life, they're still reoccurring in your history, and we're living out inside of our history. And so, if we could take just the men that are listening to this podcast today and connect them to what happened to them, their story, their actual story, and allow God to rewrite that story while they courageously walk forward in their life, letting people in and loving it, right? Because God can go and rewrite your history, but you got to walk it out.
Yep.
You got to walk it out or you're still in a prison. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you the courage to face what is very real today that happened a long time ago for some of you,
Mm-hmm.
and give you the courage to invite somebody in. That's what I love about what we're doing.
Yeah.
I absolutely love about what we're doing is we're doing real life on life discipleship. It's not a fake community. We're doing let me hear your story. Let me validate your story, but also let me give you a few tools and keep you accountable for your greatness to keep walking forward through that. Let me do it with you.
Can I add something there, Jay? Is it okay?
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Because when we're looking at, we like what Jason's saying is that we're an amalgamation of the entirety of our life. We're not just this current moment. And our history, we were designed in and through love and in and through relationship. That's how we were designed by our creator. And when those things are withheld in moments, our soul, that 8-year old, that 10-year old is saying, I still need resolution. I still need resolution. I still need resolution. And it's seeking to reconnect to its original design. So when we've been maybe knocked around, yelled at, screamed at, rejected, whatever, those are these moments of shame have separated us from that connection point. A relationship with shame and judgment disconnects us from a relationship with love, which is again our original design that our soul is trying to return back to. And so what Jay is really saying is we're trying to reconnect all parts of our past that will keep screaming through actions and reactions until it gets to its reconnected place. And one of the biggest fears, he's highlighting the invitation to go back. There's an invitation. God extends an invitation, says, hey, kiddo, I know that you would really like to act like history's behind you, but it's actually with you. And my invitation is for you to face the fear of looking at the things that you didn't have the capacity to deal with at that time. You weren't equipped to take care of yourself. You weren't equipped to process pain. You weren't equipped to know how to let people in that place. But now I want to lend you the wisdom and the understanding and the strength and the tools to go into that space and repair what felt very shattered. And it didn't have to be that you were abused. It could have been, I was in a family where we were all disconnected and I felt alone all the time and my soul constantly feels alone. And I just need to be able to get love to a little boy who desperately needed someone to get involved inside of his world. And it's not a bad thing, but oftentimes we will use religious rhetoric like, oh, I'm saved, that's in my past, God, that's covered by the blood inside of Christian circles, specifically speaking of. And we use these types of rhetorics because we're scared, because it's the unknown. We don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to resolve it. So we make up reasons in our fear to continually avoid it. And so, what Jason's talking about in this podcast and other ones is that there's an invitation on the table, that it's necessary to go to those places. Because, like he said, he wasn't holding a 26, 27, 28-year old. I can't even remember how old I was, but he wasn't holding the adult. He was holding a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old right in that moment. Right. And there are so many places where the 12-year-old is the one. The adult has the 12-year-old acting out, diving into deep levels of pornography or affairs or whatever. It's the 12-year-old who's in pain, who's trying to get a resolve, who's trying to get back to love, care, peace, trying to get out of the torment that it's inside of. And we partner with it and feed it destructive elements rather than going, oh, I see that this part of my soul is needing care and comfort. What happened? Why am I scared to look at it? And why am I scared to share that with people? What do I believe that'll mean about me if I have to lean on people to find solutions?
Yeah, it's so awesome. This is what it looks like to build a warrior, as much as building, doing the
Yeah.
push-ups and doing the log carries and the hammer throw and climbing the mountains, which again, I love all that stuff. I do that stuff. But the first place that we build the warriors is from the inside out, and everything else is um, a result or the product of that. And Justin, you're just such a champion and such a great model for what the modern day warrior looks like. And
Mm,
man, I love your story. I love the success that you have in your day. In your life today. You've got an
mm,
incredible marriage and an incredible
mm.
business, and you're an author, and yeah, you got such great friends and a great family relationship. A lot of people are going, man, I wish I could have that kind of relationship with my parents. But it started with you. It didn't start with your parents going, hey, we want to fix all this stuff. It actually started with you guys getting
Yeah.
well, and then coming with a place of forgiveness before they ever asked for it, and,
Yes.
and opening
I
up
want
a
to
space for them.
I want to just add this to that because I think that this is necessary. Um, Not only did I look into the past at what was going on inside of me, I looked to confront what played a role inside of it. Part of some of my greatest confidence building was when I had the scariest conversations with my parents, having to
Mm,
challenge the system, not even from a place of vilifying them, but like, hey, there was abuse here. Hey, there were problems here. And yeah, you guys, here's some of your guys' wins. It's not all bad, but there was some really big problems that I needed dialogue about and how it affected me. And that was met with resistance. That was met with denial. That was met with further neglect. I had to face the pain of not, because a lot of people will be like, well, what's the point? They're just going to ignore it anyways. And I was like, yeah, but that may be true. You may have these hard dialogues with people in your life where there was pain. But the thing is about you healing something inside of yourself by facing the fear. What happens is you begin to grow up. You don't feel like a little kid anymore. You're challenging the
yeah.
things that happened. You're being honest inside of those spaces. You're doing the hard conversations as the exchanges begin to go back and forth. And someone says, that never happened. Actually, it did. I'm going to push back on you. I'm going to share my heart on this. And I knew that they may never change in the process. And I didn't go in to have the conversation to change them. I went in to love myself really well, face the fear, the thing that was scaring me the most. What am I scared of? I'm scared to have this dialogue that's coming up right now inside of me as I can feel pain happening. And the next time there was pain, there was another scary dialogue that came up. I'm like, I need to have this dialogue with my grandpa right now and share this thing with the man who everyone was terrified of his entire life. And it wasn't that I was fearless, it was that I faced my fear, and it kept causing me to have less and less fear in my life as I obliterated it from these experiences. And I suddenly felt like a man. I can say that I started feeling like a man when I stopped being passive and I started facing the things that I believed at one point would break me or would break someone else by having to do it. And I realized that I wasn't so fragile, I wasn't so insignificant, and I realized that God was a lot more involved than I had previously believed to be true because he showed up in those moments with me to comfort me, even if they didn't show up well.
It's so cool because now, looking back, like your dad's such a cool guy. Like I've spent so much time with your dad, and
Yeah.
we've done some ministry together. I've brought your dad up on stage before to pray a
Yeah.
father's prayer over everyone. I've had guys come forward who needed a father's blessing and had your dad. Like your dad is such a cool guy. He's done so much work.
Yeah.
So what he watched you and Abby, right? Like completely transform their lives. And then your mom and your dad just followed right in suit. And man, they came out here for a while. I spent a bunch of time hanging out with your dad, and
Yeah.
and was able to just pour in some love into him and watch him like go from, I don't even know what I'm doing with my life. My life's tough, to, to like this powerful guy who now knows why he was alive, and was able
Yeah.
to not live in regret, right? But to like, okay,
Yeah.
how can I take the mistakes that I've learned, that I've done, and put them behind me, and then how can I give away like this father's blessing to these young men who were really like
Mhm.
your dad, needing a father to bless him. And so it's such, your story is such a cool story of redemption, and so much hope for every man who's listening to this, who has a similar story, because our breakthrough isn't just our breakthrough. It's,
That's
it
right.
is a, yeah, it's a key that allows other people to get breakthrough. It's awesome.
It's permission. It's permission, because when we are willing to face our fears, we are giving people permission to face their fears. And it may go against the acceptable cultural norm that we're inside of. And that's why people don't face fears and act outside of the box, is because we just don't do that in our family. We don't do that in our culture. But all of a sudden, they're like, wait, you can do that? Wait, so like that's helpful? That changes things? I didn't know I was allowed to show up, challenge things, look at things honestly. And so it's like Jason's saying about my story, we're just modeling. It's just like, I'm going to fully live facing fear. It is going to model something for the people around me, whether it's family or friends. It's going to start to challenge the hell that they're in, and they're going to start to go, I don't have to do I why should I be living in this hell? He's not. You mean there's a way out? I think I want to walk out of it. And we lend, like Jason said earlier, we are lending courage. Our stories, our choices lend courage to other people, and we get to go as a community forward, instead of, like, a lot of people are like, I'm scared, I'll feel so alone if I do this. No, you're just a trailblazer, and everyone gets behind you on the trail and goes, yeah, I want to run too. And that's what Jason's done in his life. He's been like, well, I'm going to show up for men. I'm going to love men. I'm going to be a trailblazer in these areas and fight for men. And it's given other men permission to have the same fight and to face their same fears inside of themselves. And it's contagious. So just know, guys and gals that are listening, but you know, facing fear and being brave is contagious.
It's awesome. Justin, you're such a beast. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today, unpacking your
Mm,
story for us, giving us your wisdom, and just, again, another encouragement to continue down the road, the pathway of fearlessness, owning our own story, and facing,
yeah.
the pain, in order to really unlock the truth and the freedom that God has for each one of us. So, um, thanks so much,
Dude,
guys. Listen.
dude, thank you.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
love you. I appreciate it.
I
I was just
love
going to
you.
say thank you. I appreciate you letting me be here with you. And I appreciate everyone willing to spend time with us and listen to me share my story. So,
Absolutely. Listen, if you guys want to get more connected to Justin and his wife, Abby, um, they can reach out on social media. Is that the best way, Justin?
yeah, you can reach out to me at Justin Stumvoll on Instagram, Abby, that's ABI, Stumvoll on Instagram. And again, Justin and Abby, that's ABI.com. And you can go listen to us on The Connected Life on any place that podcasts are downloaded. So,
It's awesome. Guys, listen, continue down that path of fearlessness, owning your story, be brave, and have an incredible week. We'll talk to you later.
bye now.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.